If you'd asked me last year what the scariest thing in Texas was, I would have said storms. Now, it's the sound of two men in black HOA uniforms standing at my gate, breathing in complete silence for 6 straight hours. For 2 peaceful years after the lawsuit, Julia and I thought we were finally done with Karen and her empire of petty tyranny. Our new place sat just outside Austin, 5 blocks outside the HOA's boundary, tucked behind old pecan trees that whispered like they carried secrets in their branches. We bought it carefully, legally, cleanly. No loopholes, no chance of HOA interference. Or so I thought. Julia worked nights at the hospital, 12-hour shifts that stretched the world thin. She'd come home exhausted, drop her bag, and fall asleep before I even poured her coffee. I kept the house soft and quiet for her. No hammering, no drilling during daylight. We'd built a slow, predictable life. That was the whole point. But storms don't always arrive loud. Some walk on quiet feet. And the first warning came one morning when Julia stepped into the kitchen with a crease between her brows. "Danny, someone was at the gate last night." I tried to shrug it off. "Probably an animal." "No," she whispered. "People." I heard whispering, and I smelled cigarette smoke. That got my attention. Nobody smoked around here. Not this far down the gravel road. I checked the cameras. The motion sensor had caught a human-sized blur behind the pecan tree at 2:43 a.m. No face, no details, just someone standing far too still. Then came the little signs. Boot prints in the gravel, the gate rattling, a glint of light, like someone checking a watch, just past the fence line. I should have listened to her sooner. ER nurses know fear from real danger. Then an envelope arrived. No stamp, no sender. Just placed in our mailbox by hand. Inside, "This isn't over." A cold hand on my spine. I didn't tell Julia right away. I wanted to protect her. But the house felt different. Like a stranger was holding their breath outside our walls. 3 nights later, Julia came home pale. "Danny," she whispered, "I heard someone breathing at the gate." My denial finally cracked. Breathing isn't imagination. That evening, I walked the property line. The pecan shadows felt too long, too still. And the boot prints, deeper this time, like someone had been standing for a long, heavy stretch. Then the second note showed up, folded into the gate seam. "We haven't forgotten you." Not I. We. That night, Julia and I spread both notes on the dining table, the cameras looping on the laptop beside them. The house felt observed, like someone was standing out there now, even if we couldn't see them. And then came the next blow. Linda, 2 houses down, came running up the road, waving a packet like it was a fire hazard. "Danny, did you see this?" 4 pages, stapled. HOA logo printed in heavy blue. My stomach dropped. Their new district map was a mess of fake authority. No county seals, no signatures, just printer ink. But the part that froze my pulse was the map itself. My property was highlighted in a different shade. Targeted. Julia leaned over my shoulder. "Look how the new boundary bends around certain houses and pushes into others. This isn't planning. It's personal." She was right. Then I noticed handwriting at the bottom of Linda's packet. "Sorry you're caught in this. G. Glenn," the former HOA treasurer. He knew something. That night, Julia and I sat at the table studying camera footage. Every shadow, every frame, every noise. She wasn't scared anymore. She was preparing. Because the truth was obvious. People don't stand outside your gate for hours unless they plan to return in daylight. And they did. Not in the form of papers, not in the form of notes, but in the form of two men in black uniforms, standing perfectly still at our gate from sunrise to noon, like statues. They didn't knock, they didn't speak, they just waited. And when I finally opened the gate, their radio crackled, a woman's voice, calm, cold, familiar. "Danny, apologize to Karen." My blood ran cold. Karen, she wasn't gone, she wasn't done, she had found her way back. And this time, she wasn't hiding behind bylaws, she was sending people, real ones. The night before the guards showed up, I heard the gate tremble, just once, like someone brushing a finger across metal. I looked outside and caught the moonlight glinting off a badge. Not footsteps, not motion, just stillness. Someone was out there, waiting. Silence in Central Texas is never just silence, it's a signal. Either a predator is near or a storm is building. That night, the trees didn't sway, the crickets didn't sing, even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. Julia curled on the couch, blanket around her shoulders, eyes flicking toward the window every few seconds. Not in fear, Julia doesn't scare. She assesses. That ER instinct in her picks up danger like a tuning fork, humming. "You feel that?" she whispered. I did. Every nerve in my body felt it. The house wasn't alone. Around 11:30, she went upstairs to shower. Pipes hummed, steam hissed softly. Normal sounds. Then I heard it. A metallic tremor from the gate. Not a shake, not a pull, just contact, someone touching it. I stepped toward the window. At first, nothing moved, just moonlight on gravel. Then a faint metallic glint slid behind the pecan shadows. A belt buckle, a badge, or something worse. For 5 long seconds, we both froze, me inside, them outside, like two hunters spotting each other through brush. Then the shadow slipped back into the trees. Julia came downstairs, saw my face, and her expression sharpened. "What happened?" "Someone's out there." She didn't gasp, didn't panic. She walked straight to the monitor and switched to the gate camera. "Danny, look." Drag marks in the dirt. Not footprints, like someone turned slowly, pivoting on one foot. Watching our house before stepping away. They'd been there a long time. That night, I barely slept. And the next morning, Glenn showed up. Old boots on gravel, shoulders hunched. The posture of a man who'd been scared for too long. "Danny, I figured you ought to know the truth." He took us to the side of the house, glancing over his shoulder like Karen herself was lurking behind the pecan tree. Then he told us everything. He hadn't retired from the HOA last year. He'd been forced out. Karen had asked him to sign off on fake invoices, creative accounting, and payments routed through places they'd never existed. When he refused, she threatened to accuse him of financial misconduct, something that could destroy him at his age. And then he handed me a small, worn flash drive. "I kept copies," he whispered. "Emails, drafts, memos, plans. She's not just rebuilding the HOA. She's rebuilding her vendetta." Julia stepped closer. "Why warn us now?" "Because the new boundary, that's her. And because the people she's using now, they'll do anything she asks." He looked at me with hollow eyes. "And she wants your property." "Personal revenge," Julia murmured. Glenn nodded. "She said she'd expand the boundary and pull your home into HOA control, one way or another." I slipped the flash drive into my pocket. It felt heavier than metal. That night, the quiet intensified. Even the house seemed to sense a shift. Julia stayed alert, glancing at the monitor every few minutes. I felt it too, like a presence outside, circling, measuring. And at dawn, I learned the truth. The presence wasn't imaginary. It had a uniform, two of them, black shirts, black pants, HOA patches on their shoulders, standing at the gate like statues carved out of shadow. They didn't knock. They didn't step forward. They didn't speak. For 6 hours, they stood absolutely motionless. And when I finally approached, one lifted a walkie-talkie. Static crackled. Then a voice I hadn't heard in nearly 2 years whispered through the speaker. Smooth, cold, controlled. "Danny, apologize to Karen." The gate creaked in my hand. "We're not done yet." The voice clicked off. But the worst part? The two guards smiled. Not friendly, not threatening, just certain. Certain that whatever came next, I wasn't ready for it. If fear has a sound, it's not screaming. It's whispering through a radio at midnight. A voice you hoped you'd never hear again. I found that out the night everything came crashing down. The drag mark on the gravel outside the gate was still fresh when Julia whispered, "Danny, they're not leaving." She was right. Whoever had been coming night after night wasn't just watching anymore. They were waiting. I checked the cameras again. Nothing. Just darkness and the quiet shift of the pecan branches. Then, at 2:08 a.m., the radio crackled. Not ours, not from inside the house. Outside, near the gate. A faint voice, woman's, sharp. So familiar, it punched the air from my chest. "Hold position, he's awake." Julia grabbed my arm. "Danny, was that—" "Yes, Karen." The same tone she used in court when she hissed, "You'll regret crossing me." Only this time, she wasn't hiding behind legal paperwork. She was hiding behind uniforms. Morning didn't make anything better. At exactly 9:13 a.m., Julia was pouring coffee when she whispered, "Danny, they're back." Two men in black uniforms stood at our gate again, motionless as fence posts. They didn't knock. They didn't call. They didn't move. They just stood there like they were waiting for a command. I stepped outside, but before I reached the gravel road, one of them clicked a shoulder mic. Click. Static. Then Karen's voice, "Ask him what we told him." The taller guard raised his head, visor reflecting the sun. "You owe Miss Little an apology." I stared at him. For what? For humiliating her, for challenging her authority. I almost laughed. She committed fraud. The guard didn't blink. "She wants you to say it. In person." "And if I don't?" He didn't answer. The shorter guard tapped his earpiece. Static. Then Karen again, quieter, colder. "Tell him we're done asking." Julia stepped onto the porch behind me. "Danny, get back inside." The guards turned like synchronized machines, slow, precise, and walked away. No threats, no warnings. And somehow, that was worse. That evening, after Julia left for her night shift, I finally opened Glenn's flash drive. My hands trembled. There were emails, drafted expansion plans, fake boundary maps, minutes from secret board meetings, and one folder labeled Primary Objective. Inside, a document. Just one sentence typed in bold: "Bring Daniel Harlow's property under HOA jurisdiction at any cost." My throat closed. At any cost. Then, a second page, Karen's handwriting scanned. "He embarrassed me. He ruined my record. He thinks he won. He'll learn." My stomach dropped. This wasn't an HOA dispute. This was a vendetta with structure, uniforms, funding, and people willing to follow orders. I pulled up the latest camera feed and froze. A tent. A literal black tent now sat tucked behind the pecan tree near the fence line, just barely visible. The guards weren't leaving. They were camping. Around 1:50 a.m., the radio crackle woke me. But it wasn't outside. It was inside. A speaker left on the porch table, one I didn't put there, It flickered with static. Then Karen's voice slithered out. "Danny, open the door." I grabbed a flashlight and cracked the curtain. 3 guards now, all in black, standing in a perfect line, facing the house. No movement, no breathing visible, just the stillness of people trained to obey. Karen's voice hissed again. "You don't want this to escalate." Then suddenly, a scream. Not from outside, from my security feed. Camera 4, back road. Julia's car swerved into frame, brakes screaming on gravel, and behind her, headlights, a dark SUV following too close. My heart stopped. Julia threw the car door open, sprinting toward the porch. "Danny, get inside now." The SUV halted. A man stepped out. Uniform, badge, earpiece. He raised a hand. "Julia Harlow," he said calmly, "you will step aside. Our order is with your husband." She didn't move. "Touch my wife," I yelled, "and I swear—" But the guard interrupted. "No harm will come to her, unless you refuse." The earpiece crackled. Karen again. "Bring him out." Julia grabbed my hand. "Danny, don't step outside." But something shifted in me then. Not fear, anger. They followed my wife at night. They chased her car. They approached my home. Enough. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The guards tensed. The SUV driver placed a hand on his holster. Julia whispered, "Please don't." I raised my voice so Karen would hear through whatever radio she was hiding behind. "You want an apology?" My voice shook, but not from fear. "Here's your apology." And then, a spotlight exploded across the yard. Everyone turned. A county sheriff SUV, then another behind it, and another. 3 vehicles, lights flooding the gravel, the fence, the uniforms. Sheriff Hawkins stepped out, hand resting on his belt. "Gentlemen," he called calmly, "you're a long way outside your jurisdiction." The guards stiffened. "This is internal HOA enforcement," the SUV driver said. "No," Hawkins replied, holding up Glenn's flash drive. "This is fraud, harassment, and impersonation of authority." He nodded toward the trees. "Drop your radios. Hands where I can see them." The men in black hesitated. Then the sheriff's deputies stepped forward, hands on weapons. The guards dropped their radios. Static hissed from the falling speakers. And for the first time, I heard fear in Karen's voice. "Don't let them take—" The radio cut. Silence. Sheriff Hawkins looked at me. "You good, son?" I nodded slowly. Julia squeezed my hand. Her eyes were wet, but steady. Hawkins continued. "We've been tracking this for weeks. Glenn came to us. He was terrified, but he finally talked. We've got warrants for Karen and every board member who helped her." I swallowed hard. It was over. Finally. Actually, over. 3 days later, the tent was gone. The guards were processed. Karen was arrested 2 counties over trying to flee. And for the first time in months, our road felt like ours again. Julia and I sat on the porch swing in the soft morning sun. "You think she'll stay gone this time?" she asked. I took her hand. "Yeah," I said. Storms finally passed. But as the wind rustled through the pecan trees, I couldn't help glancing at the gate. Storms pass. But I've learned something. Some storms don't start in the sky. Some start with a whisper through a radio. And those are the ones you never forget.